So here's a question. How do you know if you're a victim of narcissism? Well, I'm going to give you 8 signs. And these are 8 signs that you should just look out for. And the first sign is does the narcissist make you feel like you're always wrong and they're always right? Because here's the thing, narcissists idealize themselves. This fantasy version of themselves is just a front to protect themselves from having to confront their own imperfections. It's something that kind of bounces around in their world. If we were to pop into their minds, they'd be like, in my world, I'm always the hero. I'm never the villain. But mention my flaws and I'm going to have a meltdown. So what you're noticing is that, narcissists are always, defending their egos. And when you challenge a narcissist, it's not just a disagreement with them. It becomes this existential crisis for them. They'll be like, wrong me? That's impossible. Because a narcissist just can't fathom the idea that they might have a flaw. They may not be perfect. And if you disagree with a narcissist in any way, it's clear to them that you just don't understand them. Which is why narcissists just go out of their way just to rationalize why others must be wrong. And this is to protect, this fragile psyche. Because they just don't want to go dig deeper into, their defections and their wounds. And since narcissists just go out of their way just to idealize themselves, you can imagine the challenges they must face if they were ever to come face to face with their imperfection. And internally, they rationalize that by thinking, along the lines of, your inability to accept my flaws is not a burden I must bear. So they project it out into the world, thinking that, your inability to accept their flaws is not their burden. And the second sign is that, do you ever just feel like you're not being heard? Instead, what narcissists are looking for are just the people who they're able to convince to mirror back this, idealized version of themselves. So what you end up finding is talking to a narcissist is like being in a conversation where the mirror is more important than the person that's standing in front of the mirror. Because to a narcissist, keeping up this illusion is their main agenda. And it's almost like they're going out into the world saying, you there, can you reflect back all my greatness? Yes? Great, you're hired. What you end up finding is that it's less about, this human connection that they're looking for and more just about, affirmations, just keeping up this grand illusion of theirs. And that takeaway from the victim, from the other side of it, is that narcissists, they just prioritize anyone that reflects back their idealized version of themselves over just genuine empathy and connection. So if you feel like you're not truly being seen or heard, that's because you're not. And the third thing to watch out for is it feels like you can never pin a narcissist down. So it's like holding a narcissist accountable. It's like, trying to nail Jello to a wall. What you might find is if you make plans with a narcissist and they fail to show up, it will be because you did something wrong. It won't be because they're inconsiderate. The reasoning will be related to their version of something that you may have done, even in the past. And when you look back, nothing in that conversation seems to add up because you can't pin them down. It's like they're made of Teflon or something. And just when you think you've got them, they just find a way to just slip away, just slip through your fingers. And narcissists are really great at just blame shifting because it's never their fault. It's like they live in this bizarre world where the rules and logic just don't apply. And what you'll find is they'll justify their inconsiderate behavior just with all these reasons that just kind of twist and turn and take you in all sorts of different directions through this, wicked maze and labyrinth. And each one of these paths leads away from the narcissist, away from their own accountability. And in this process, what it does is it breeds just inconsistency and confusion within the person that has to deal with them. So you want to pin them down, well, good luck. It's easier to pin down a cloud of smoke because the moment that you feel like you've grasped it, they just change shape. And you might try to just, rationalize their faults. But what you find is if you do, everything just becomes this wild goose chase. And their version of events is just like, they're these pieces of a puzzle where none of the pieces fit. You can't see a whole picture. And what we'll find is the challenge of holding a narcissist accountable, it feels impossible. Another sign that you might be in a narcissistic relationship is you find yourself just full of self-doubt. And what we'll find is just being a rational, compassionate human being, like somewhere in our minds, we're going to think that, there can't possibly be something wrong with a narcissist. So if it's not them, that kind of forces us to wonder, it's like, maybe it's me. Maybe it's something I did. And the thing that narcissists are really good at is convincing you that, they're right and you're wrong. And it can feel like you're just in a debate where you're constantly second guessing your own arguments. You start off thinking, something is a little off here. And what you find is the narcissists are just such master debaters. They just find a way of spinning it. It's like, oh, you think I'm wrong? Let me explain why that's impossible. And they seem like they're just so convinced that you are wrong. And the self-doubt is there just to make us wonder, it's like, maybe I am, when you're not. It's somewhere inside us, there's just, this storm of little confusion that's starting to come through. And you know deep down that there's something just isn't right. But somehow their confidence just appears almost like a tidal wave. And it just washes over any certainty that you have. And there was a time where we used to be confident and trusting our own gut. But now, after some time with these in these toxic environments, we're not sure what to believe anymore. So what you might find in these narcissistic entanglements is you start to question your own judgment, and their confidence and their assuredness is just kind of like this cloud that makes you quote second guess your own thoughts, your own thinking. If they're that confident, maybe it is something about me that's wrong. Maybe the narcissist is right. It becomes almost like this mental tug of war. The narcissist believes that, they're so confident that you're wrong that their certainty makes you just kind of wobble a little bit. And the self-doubt, it just builds up over time. So if you find yourself in self-doubt, ask, was this self-doubt mine? Or was this a thought or a feeling or emotion that was just kind of implanted in my own head by a narcissist? That, gaslit me into just believing that there is something off with me. And another sign that you might be in a narcissistic relationship is you never feel like there's ever any sense of conflict resolution. And with conflict, what you find is the conversations just keep going round and round and round. What you're finding is this is just like one smoke screen after another. And it just adds up, conversation after conversation. Everything just starts to pile up, and eventually you just kind of tap out. Just tap out of trying to just get resolution to the original conflict. Just out of sheer exhaustion, just because it's just that tiring to try to follow this narrative. And just when you think you're starting to get somewhere, then wham, there's another smoke screen, and then another smoke screen, and another smoke screen. Like we were just talking about the dishes, so I want to get resolution on the dishes. And yet, 10 minutes later, it's like it's a serious debate about, the merits of episode 9 of the 4th season of Modern Family. It's like, how did it get there? Because it's like every single conversation ends up becoming this wild goose chase. Just when you think you've caught the goose, it just turns into a rabbit. And you're like, wait a second. Well, I thought we were trying to talk about what got me upset. And all of a sudden now we're debating about that time I forgot to, buy milk in 2018. And these conversations, what ends up happening is they just get so exhausting. It's the amount of mental alertness it takes just to follow this rabbit hole. It just twists and it just turns. And what you'll find is you just never actually reach the core of any issue. And finally, after being spun around and made dizzy, you just kind of look up and it's almost like you forgot where this whole conversation and debate even started. Because these conversations, what they do is they start with lots of energy. It's like, I'm ready to tackle this problem. But after the 5th detour, it's just like, you're just mentally tapped out just from exhaustion. The conversation ends up just about trying to manage the diversions, the tactics. And if you can't manage them, it comes at the cost of your own peace of mind, your own sanity, your own clarity. And another sign that you might be in a narcissistic relationship is just what you'll find is rage and anger are their first response to ever being challenged. What you'll find is narcissists, they must protect that idealized version of themselves at all costs. You think you're just kind of walking around having a normal conversation with somebody, and then you'll find that if you challenge them, even accidentally, what you're doing is you're just like stepping on a landmine. You barely get a word out, and then boom, narcissists just explode in rage. Arr! And what ends up happening is you begin to realize that, their self-image is just like a house of cards. And if you dare to question a narcissist's, self-image, they just go full King Kong on you, just swatting at airplanes. The first threat of their own insecurity. All of a sudden, it's just they must annihilate anyone who dares question their greatness. It's like, how dare you challenge them? And at the first sight, they just try to just squash you like a bug. It's almost like, their anger. It's almost like a sledgehammer. And the moment that you poke at their little facade, they just swing it and smash any challenge. And that rage that they have, it's meant to keep you living in fear, to keep you shut down, to keep you, just recoiled. This is so the narcissist can just avoid their own pain, their own suffering. Because underneath the skin, these outbursts, these anger, rage, it isn't about silencing you. It's about drowning out their own inner turmoil that's going on in their own head. They're like somewhere in the back of their mind, they're like, if I'm loud and angry enough, maybe I won't have to deal with my own issues, right? So if you're noticing how often that rage and anger becomes their first line of defense when their idealized self is challenged, there's a really good chance you're dealing with a narcissist. And another sign that you might be in a narcissistic relationship is that you're discarded very easily, and sometimes it can be even without warning. It almost feels like if you're not able to mirror back their perfect identity of themselves, it's just like you have no value to them. So they will just discard you like yesterday's news. Yeah, you're valuable when you were propping me up yesterday, but today is a different day. You're questioning me. So it's like, go away. And it feels like, 1 minute you're the star of the show, and then the next, you're just voted off the island. Sorry, you're no longer reflecting my greatness. It's time for you to go. And that's why narcissists love having their little flying monkeys. It's almost like this harem of people that just do nothing but, preach the praises of the narcissist without any question. And any time that you find it's just like you start questioning anything of the narcissist, it'll just kind of be like, where's my harem? Where's my flying monkeys? It'll tell you how wrong you are. These flying monkeys, they're not rational people. They're not level-headed. They're not rational. And that's why narcissists are just so attracted to these flying monkey types. So if you ever find yourself just asking any kind of question, anything that could be confrontational or interpreted as confrontational, the narcissist will quickly just go out and seek a new source of supply. When that happens, it's like the discard phase begins. Because if you're going to challenge them, then that's their cue to say, oh, man, you're seeing through me. It's time for me to find someone else. Just like a magician's act. It's like, now you see the relationship, and poof, now you don't. And to exit a relationship with a narcissist, it's not graceful. It's not peaceful at all. It's almost like a scorched earth policy that takes place. And they will even tear you down to make, leaving easier for them. And just all the time repeating, it's not me, it's you. It's all you. It's always been you. You have one job, make me feel awesome. And you fail me, right? So if you're feeling like that, discard is used to control you, to trigger like an abandonment response in you, or it could even be codependency in you, this is actually a really good sign. Like the fear of a discard could be a sign that you're just dealing with a narcissist who's manipulating you, who sees that as a weakness in you, and they want to use it for control. And another sign that you might be in a narcissistic relationship is it feels like you're talking to or dealing with, both Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. Narcissists, when you first meet them, it's just like they tend to use charm and flattery and fake empathy. And they can even use their own sexuality just to gain the trust when you first meet with them. And what you find is just over time, it's just that charm fades. And then what you're left with is just this criticism, this sarcasm. All these passive-aggressive comments just show up. Because at first, it's just like, look at me, I'm so empathetic, I'm so understanding. And then all of a sudden, it's just like, just wait for it, because the other shoe's about to drop. What we find is this early magic act, it just gets old. And all of a sudden, it's swapped out for just this reality show. And those compliments, they turn into sarcasm. And the flattery turns into criticism. Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. It's like, you are the best thing ever. And it just suddenly switches, yo, worst person ever. Just like that. Because they're able to just shift in perspective. It becomes this transformation from, fairy tale to nightmare. One day you feel like you're the king or queen of the world, like royalty, treated like royalty. And then suddenly you're the villain. And narcissists, they can be so skilled at just spinning the narrative so well that you actually start believing it. Maybe I am a little paranoid. Maybe this is all in my head. And it's like you're being gaslit with a flamethrower. They do it with this dual personality. Narcissist just, transitions from, initial kind of charm to eventual just criticism and blame. And yeah, at first it's just like, hey, you were the kindest person ever. You're the sexiest person in the world. Sexiest one that they've ever met. And remember, it's always your fault for making them feel the way they do. So those are 8 signs that you might be in a narcissistic relationship. I'm just going to give them to you again. 1, you're always wrong and they're always right. You never feel heard. You can never pin them down on anything. You find yourself just full of self-doubt. You never feel like there's any conflict resolution. And you experience like rage and anger if they're ever challenged. You're discarded just easily. And then you feel like you're dealing with both Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde at the same time. And how many of these signs have you experienced? 1, 5, all of them? And what you'll find is just long-term exposure to one or more of these signs can leave just lasting mental and emotional effects around all the people that are exposed to them. Things like high anxiety, flashbacks, suddenly feeling panic, trouble sleeping, and just losing your sense of purpose and sense of self. And these are actually normal trauma responses to a very abnormal situation. They're signs that your nervous system has been hijacked from a situational trauma. So to protect yourself, it's important to be able to label the abusive behavior because seeing it helps prevent you from getting sucked into it. That's just so important. And once you've done that, the next step is to address the trauma itself, to work through the experiences and integrate those experiences and make sure that you're never going to be a victim of a narcissist ever again. Because yeah, you were once. But after integration, it's like it's never going to happen again. And trauma is a tricky thing because it takes a delicate touch. There's a lot of ways that we can process trauma. It's like EFT, there's, somatic experiences, different mindfulness techniques, IFS therapy, and even hypnotherapy. And what I use with my clients is hypnotherapy. And then I just incorporate all of those other different techniques wherever they seem to fit, whatever seems to work the best. It's just having a big toolbox just to unpack all the trauma. And hypnotherapy is a way to just kind of calm and relax a very reactive mind. And once our minds are relaxed, we can change our relationship to the trauma itself. And once that happens, it's just that entanglement gets broken. There's another perspective that's kind of put into place. And trauma becomes something that happened to us, something that we learned from, something that we grew from, something that we integrated into our identity and moved forward for. And what we find is there's purpose, there's meaning that we can kind of incorporate into our lives, incorporate into our psyche, and then move forward with. So if you suspect that you're a victim of narcissistic abuse and would like support, then you can click on the link below or look into the comments, wherever it might be, and you can find more information about me and my hypnotherapy program. And then if you're ready, we can make arrangements and book an assessment to see if I can help. And what we find through the healing process and through the recovery process is dealing with these narcissists isn't about understanding, their fantasy little world, that's when we see that these delusions, it's not about you. It's not something that you did. It's about the narcissist's refusal to face their own wounds. And empowerment comes from recognizing that this behavior is just a defense mechanism in them. And the reality is that narcissists just can't go inwards, but you can. And that's an advantage. It's an advantage to the healing process. Because the healing journey, what it ends up being, is a journey about finding the strength that you have deep in your core. And it's not about validating the narcissist. Because what you're finding is that your worth isn't linked to a narcissist story or their need for approval. Because in the recovery story, you're not a discarded prop. You become a hero that's just rediscovering their own light. So click on the link and let's set up an assessment. And if it works out, we'll set up regular weekly one-on-one sessions and just go through the entire healing process together and get to the other side.